We're
So
live.
we're live.
It's we're live. I think. Yeah, it says we're live. If if people only knew how taxing this was on our brain to get
Right?
well, they would maybe more appreciate it. Anyway,
Record too.
I need to hit record. My bad.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Please.
Record.
Thank you. Okay.
We're now live, and let's see here. I'm gonna make sure we're on. You know me. I'm gonna go over to the page and make sure it says we're live.
Okay.
So, there it is. I'm gonna hit play. Okay, yeah, everyone can see us and we're goofy. Okay, great. I'm gonna just share this again on, yep. Hi, you can talk. Go ahead and do your introduction thing that you love to do.
Well, I was gonna break from the norm, and this is Dyslexia Coffee Talk. Um, haven't been here in a very long time, almost 2 years to the day. Our last guest was in May of 2023, and that was Tiffany James with Nessie. Other than that, Coffee Talk has not been on the air in 2 years, and there's a lot of reasons behind that.
Yeah.
So, why did Coffee Talk go away? Well, it didn't go away. It just sort of, I mean, it kind
Dissipated.
of did. It did go away, but it's not like I terminated it or anything. It's just that I have a full-time job.
We have lives.
Yep. And I homeschool my child. I have now for 2 years. And between being a wife, a mom, an employee, and a homeschool parent, I don't have a whole lot of free time.
Ah,
Oh, and I've been a soccer mom for the last 11 years. And soccer just came to an end for my family. So after 11 years of soccer almost every single weekend, I finally have my weekends back. So I was always trying to, slip coffee talk in between like soccer games on the weekends. And I don't know that coffee talk's going to become a regular thing again, because I'm still a homeschool mom and a full-time employee and a wife and, all that jazz. But at least today, here we are, and coffee talk is back for um, May 4th.
May 4th. Is it? Oh, it's the 4th. Oh, shoot. It's Star Wars
Yep,
Day. Look,
it is Star Wars Day. May the
look at
4th be with you.
the background. Like your husband's geekdom is comes to play. I think my husband says too. Um, Maybe that's what he was watching downstairs. I don't know. Um, so anyway, what are we doing here, by the way? So what are we doing? We're just kind of like resurrecting, hashing out, whatever. Um,
I
I
think we're talking about our healing journeys, and some of it we're not going to hold back on.
Our healing journeys. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, has it been healing? Um,
Our hell raising journeys. How about that?
Crazy. There's a lot of words I want to use, but I gotta keep C so it doesn't get like flagged for cuss words, even though inevitably I will cuss at some point. Which is just the constant in my life, if there is one. Um, yeah, so I'll just say for me, yeah, I've been doing like Instagram lives I was because it was Georgia poll, or legislation hell season here. I already cussed. Well, it's not really a cuss word, but so that was like 45 days, and I was chasing some really messed up bills. Like I didn't even touch the literacy bills. I mean, guys already knew those were gonna pass. Um, I went to the mental health bills because there were profiling bills, and those bills would target our kids.
Yeah.
Um, because it's the way they have it set up, the verbiage inside the bills was terrifying. You saw the bills. I showed you the entire thing as it was going on.
Well, and side note, it was one of them is based on a bill that passed in Texas under the radar
Yes,
2 years
exactly. That's
ago
where it came
in
from.
response to Uvalde. So, which I had absolutely no idea about until I'm landing back in Houston from work travel, and you text me during the day and you're like, I know you're traveling, but I need to talk to you. And I'm going, I'm not even going to land until like 6:45 my time You're like, it's fine, call me. We really need to talk. And then you read me the bill while I drove home.
Yes. And that was thanks to a senator here in Georgia. So Elena Parent, when she was on the Senate floor, she was the one that found it. She had passed it out and put it on everybody's desk in the Senate. And so she's the one that tipped me off about it. But yeah, it was a bill that was created out of Uvalde. Granted, Texas has got a lot of guardrails around it, and everything has to be public facing, and everything has to be like you have to be registered, you have to have the appropriate credentials and things like that. But you know, if you want to take it further, which is even more disturbing, because I found out it's actually an initiative at the federal level.
Yeah.
Um, and it rolled out under HHS, and the terrifying fact of who's running that right now. Anyway, it rolled you know, I'm just gonna hope he doesn't know about it. So well, actually, I hope he does know about it, and I hope he kills it. So sorry. So
But
it's
but you brought up a good point with that, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I
no, it's
want to
okay.
sidebar for a second,
HHS thing.
because, well, no, just the political environment, right? Because with the dismantling of the Department of Education, which is not complete yet, but it's obviously well underway. I know. Um, like we made some posts, and the majority of the comments were great, like the majority of the comments on DI usually are. And then some of the comments were, it's really a shame when pages like this turn political, and other things like that. And I just want to say, because it really bothered me at the time,
Yes,
but
it did. You got in your feelings. You were mad.
I was mad. But because education is political,
Yeah.
whether anybody wants to believe that or not, education is political. As advocates, we try to work both sides of the aisle. And so we typically don't publicly go out there and go, I believe in this and I
And don't
vote for
vote this
this.
way. I vote that. Yeah, no, we don't do
Right.
that.
Yeah, we don't do that on our,
On our
in our
own.
personal lives. Absolutely.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
out there as advocates, we don't do that. But, for people who want to get in their feelings about the current political environment and say that, it's really a shame when groups like the Dyslexia Initiative turn political. Let's just say education's always been political, and fighting for our kids' rights is political. And in the current environment, if you don't want it to be political, then that's going to be a really difficult thing for individuals to
Navigate.
navigate, because it's all going to be political right now. And, what I hope is that civil discourse reigns, and some of the comments, which were name calling and bashing and things like that, that doesn't happen. We all know that it's going to, though. But, to think that that what we do in our community can't be political is naive at best. And I'll leave it there at naive at best, because this is a political landscape, and that's the reality of it.
Yeah, and like that's the part is like I didn't get into fighting for, you know, this or any of it to become somebody that like hangs out or talks to and mingles with politicians.
Yeah.
18-year-old me is very like, oh my God, who are you? Like because I was so just like health, that unhealthy distrust of like your husband. Like I'm like, I hate the government. I hate no, get out of my business and leave me alone. Um, and I was just very anti everything. And you and I joked, but yeah, I was like a big anarchist. I was like, burn the whole thing down, and I've kept that mentality. But I didn't expect to find myself working with people locally to drive change at the local level,
Yeah.
which was something we had to do
Yeah.
because if we don't, and like I said when I spoke with, like on the panel with Kareem, like, these people know I don't like them. You don't have to. And I'll say it
Right.
here too. I got 40 days of my life every year, right? And then those 40 days, I can be nice to you. But if you are out of pocket, I'm gonna say something.
Yeah.
Nobody gets off the hook with me, and they all know if you engage with me and you come to me with an ask, that means there are a set of norms that we all have to abide by. And if you do something stupid, I'm allowed to do what I do. And so, you know, the like I said, I fundamentally don't agree or don't even get along with either side here in Georgia or anywhere. But I really don't like the party line politics. But nonetheless, like I do know, and everybody, I'm just gonna let everybody get
Yeah.
mad at this. I'll say this: like Democrats have great big good ideas, but they suck at implementing them. Republicans, at least in Georgia, as it pertains to education, that's how we got. So all right, I'm just gonna give everybody a rundown real quick. So we've now banned 3Qing. Um, it has its own bill. We now have so we've got the SB 48, which is when my son started it. I think he was like 8 years old when that started. And that's where we screen kids 3 times a year for characteristics of dyslexia. And then this year, that's rolling out is HB 538, which is our Georgia Early Literacy Act, which mandates high quality instructional material, and a whole slew of things. And it also it incorporates handwriting. It incorporates all of these things that used to be basic, fundamental, just how we learn to read and write and do math. But then this year, they whipped around and they added HB 307 with it. And with that, it literally like cements, you know, they have to say the word dyslexia because HB it was basically an amendment, but there was a little some other stuff in the bill to make it its own bill. But when you're talking about HB 538, you now have to say it's the Georgia Dyslexia Early Literacy Act, right?
Right.
So it's within 307, it actually gives the parameters of you must identify, remediate, and
Mhm.
it's like our own version of Child Find, MTSS, RTI, all of that codified at the local level, and everybody has to say the word dyslexia, so they
Yeah.
can't say SLD in reading. Um, but with that being said, it's like I never thought I would have to do anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't. It makes me feel kind of dirty, but I did make a vow that I was going to make it better for the kids behind mine. And you were like that. A lot of the advocates out here are like that. We just want to make it better for the kids behind ours. Um, sometimes you just have to like get in the middle of things that you are like, oh God, what are we doing? Why am I talking to this person? Why is truth and education up in my Twitter DMs? But very, very effective. And they
Yeah.
have the ear, and I was getting bills ahead of time because of them. They were sending me because they were terrified about the profiling bill. And
Yeah.
so that kind of pivots back to it. So yeah, like political landscape and education go hand in hand. If you want to override local control or get legislation right for literacy in your state, you have to get in the mud. Like you have
Yeah.
to get in the trenches with it.
Right.
And
And we have some of those laws, but they're not, you know,
yours, and the
they're
irony.
they're poorly implemented, and everybody finds a way to get around them. Um,
Yes, but that's what that's the part that we've taken. So a lot of it is modeled after Texas legislation, but the only difference is we've literally like codified it with words like to make sure it was
yeah.
implemented, because like we did use like the handbook as an example, like I think with the first two bills. But I'm like,
The
Texas,
Texas Dyslexia Handbook,
yeah, so that's what
which I'm
actually.
just going to say the fact that a state has to have a handbook on how to deal with dyslexia is shameful. And just, it shows that arrogance around not wanting to follow idea, the ignorance around what the law is supposed to do, and like, and saying that's going to really hack some people off. But the fact that we have to, and it's the gold standard, which is laughable, but the fact that we have to have a Texas dyslexia handbook at all is just, it's absolutely shameful. And you'll remember several years ago sitting in an IEP meeting and somebody holding up the Texas dyslexia handbook and going, "Oh my God, we follow this every day." And I looked at her square in the face and went, "You wish you followed it every day, because you're actually not following it. And would you like me to tell you all of the sections that you're breaking right now in this meeting alone?"
No, no. That the one meeting I went to you with, I was like, no, God.
Yeah.
And like I said, they were trying so hard to be nice, and then that like comp ed
Yeah.
thing came out, and then the ugly showed up. I'm like, oh, there it is. I was waiting because y'all are like the nicest team I've ever met in my life, and then like the moment you talked about comp ed, like then the ugly came out. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
there it is. You
Yeah.
know, but
But we're not going to rehash all that.
I'm not
So,
gonna rehash all of it. It's just like basically regarding like touching on like politics and advocating and like what we do for our kids. Like inevitably, if you continue the path of advocating after you've gotten your kid out and you've gone back for the rest, you're gonna find yourself in some conversations, and it's it doesn't do anybody favors to avoid it.
no.
Like you're not doing anybody any favors by putting your head in the sand and acting like it's okay, because again, I don't agree with either side, neither do you. Like we're both like team, okay, common sense.
Yeah.
Oh
And I just, I just spent some time with like my parents who
yeah.
are tend to be party-based voters, and I won't say which party specifically, but when the conversations that we had, I went, I'm an issue-based voter. I'm not a party line voter. I'm
I'm a
an
policy.
issue-based voter. And education and children are the top two on my list.
Mhm.
And those are the rabbit holes that I go down, because that's the rabbit hole I've been down for 9 years. And but anyway, I don't want to talk about my personal
Okay. Hey, no, no, but that's not how it was. Well, that was the messaging that like the same thing though. I did want to just clarify because I do remember that people got like really upset when you posted that. I'm going, like God forbid if you guys happen to stumble across a video of Kareem and I doing our panel, because we definitely dove into that. You have to be willing to work with both, like whoever,
yeah,
and you don't gotta like them. You can peace out at any moment.
yeah,
You don't have to have Christmas cards,
right.
but if it's, like as I said, like then in there were two parts. I feel it incumbent upon me to make sure every child in the state of Georgia learns to read. But I also feel it's my duty, past that, to make sure all children are afforded the right to read. And
Mhm.
when you're doing that, if you're out here saying all means all, if you're out here until all kids can read, okay, well, that means exactly what it means, but you're not going to get it by being nice and cookies and kissing. I mean, yeah, the kissing does come in, but I don't do that, which is why I'm not the chosen one. And like, I'm the one that's behind the scenes with all the data, which I'm totally okay with. But that's what the relationship with Kareem and I turned into, or how it hashed out,
Right.
was because of politics, because we both understood what was at stake. We're like, well, if we don't do this, then kids are just going to keep being tossed into prison and getting addicted
Mhm.
to drugs and all the things like that. So
Yeah.
sorry about that, but yeah, you have to. So anyway, moving on. But yeah, I
But
was.
but yeah, I want to circle around on like what you just said, because that's a real sore spot with me. And I know it's a real sore spot with you too. And I want to, in saying that, I want to circle back to something that I know that I've said repeatedly, which is I think our community is really, really cruel. And I want to take that back because of this. And I've really been spending a lot of time thinking about this. If you think about the number of children that are dyslexic across the country, right?
Mhm.
And if you think about the number of people that are trying to assist our community on various social media platforms, whether it's Facebook or X or Instagram or like YouTube
Wait, are you
or
about to have the curated conversation or the other one? Go
no.
ahead.
Well, the majority of people that have dyslexic children are not engaging in comments or posting anything. They're watching, they're listening, they're watching, they're learning, which, you know, I'll say was the purpose of DI when we created DI was to help educate and empower families, to help
Mm.
educate and empower those parents who suddenly find themselves in a trench that they had no idea that they were going to be thrown into, trying to fight tooth and nail for that little one that pulls on them and calls them mom and dad, or grandmother and grandfather, or aunt and uncle, or foster parent, or guardian, or whatever. But you have a little one that's looking up at you, dependent upon you to fight for them, for their survival, right? For their educational rights, their educational existence, their ability to navigate a system that nobody has a choice about because it's compulsory, and get out on the other side intact, going after their dreams as
Yeah.
they want to go after their dreams, instead of, you know, a modified version because somebody didn't want to have the faith or belief or dreams or ability to educate them in the way that they wanted to go. Versus those, you know, if you do the math, it's way less than 1% of us are on social media of any platform,
Hmm.
making any amount of noise, commenting, um, but just engaging, posting, commenting, creating pages, creating groups, creating narratives, creating content, whatever. That's less than 1% of the dyslexia community. And so I've said, you know, we have a very cruel community, and I want to take that back because that's absolutely not true. Now, we have some, unfortunately, there is a small group of people who want to,
Small group. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm being nice,
I know. I'm
who
like,
want to control what is said and done and not said and done, and who advocates and who doesn't advocate, etc. And to me, that's an absolute shame. And I want to encourage people who may or may not see that to never let your voice be diminished. And I say that from somebody who's had her voice stolen. You've had your voice stolen,
mm-hmm.
and that wasn't good, right, just, or fair. And my voice was stolen because an,
Because of me.
an incredibly small group of people said that I had changed and I was mean and I was all of these things. And I can tell you, I've only been mean once.
I think I've seen you mean like once, and that wasn't even towards me. It was just you were mad. But go ahead.
I was mad, but I was also in a really bad place personally and having really struggling at the time. And I apologized publicly and privately numerous times for the one time that I stepped out of line. And but I was silenced because of that one instance, which was blown significantly out of
But
proportion.
then, well, but hold on. I'm not gonna let you do that because that whole thing turned into just a stepping. It just like we predicted. It turned into a platform for somebody to then use to, do whatever it is they do now. But like they monetize off of that, and it was like, oh
They
hey,
did.
let's like burn you at the stake. But I'm gonna roll back and I'm gonna start making money off of it now,
Right.
right?
Well, what I wanted to say though was what they said was that I was out here for fame and glory, which nobody knows my name. You know, people mostly just think that I'm the host of Dyslexia Coffee Talk, and that, you know, they have no idea that I created the Dyslexia Initiative and that I put all of the content on the website, and, you know, all of the reasons and whys, etc. You know, people said that I was out here for fame when I wasn't, and I'm still not. After all, I've been relatively quiet for 3 years and haven't said very much in the community at all. And somebody who wants fame doesn't do that. But at the
They
same
don't go
time,
silent. They don't roll silent. Yeah.
right. But at the same time, I think accusing somebody of fame is an easy accusation to make because if you're on social media, think about it. Anybody on
Oh,
social media is on social media for a certain amount of ego. To be on social media is an egocentric move, period.
wait. Okay, hold on. But what? All right, let me just put a pin in that before you go there because I know what you're about to say. Pin in it real quick.
Hmm.
COVID,
Yeah.
pre-COVID,
Hmm.
you and I both were using social media as no, it is not. I'm so sorry. There's my dog. It is in the kitchen, honey. No, ma'am. Okay, so the feral one is right there at my door. Anyway,
Because she knows that she's not supposed to be in your
exactly,
room,
she
so of
knows.
course she's in your
And
room.
yes, so pre-COVID, you and I had already taken to social media, but we were anonymously doing it. And we were having the same conversations, right? Like we were actively talking about like what this was doing to us mentally, what it was
Yeah.
doing to our kids. And like then the idea that
What
it's frowned,
dyslexia, what advocating for our
yeah,
kids. Let's be
yeah.
clear
It's
about
like, yeah, we were having a conversation literally anonymously trying to let like just we needed it out of our head
brain.
because if we kept it, if it just stayed there, it would fester. And we both knew that. We learned that from attending numerous IEP meetings. And it was like,
Yeah.
oh, like I've got to get it
It
out of
was
my.
sort of like throwing it out into the cosmos, and whoever did what with it, that was fine, but it was just
Yes,
at least out of our brains.
exactly.
Agree.
And so that's why I don't agree with what you said because when you and I, like prior to COVID, right, we used social media as a means of awareness, but also as a
Right.
means of,
But I'm not saying that what we do, our advocacy is an egocentric. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying being on social media at all. Think about your personal wall, right? I mean, you have
uh,
family, you have friends, you post a picture, and I'm saying you as in the
I know.
universal you. You post a picture, somebody likes it, somebody comments, "Hey, congratulations," or "Oh, I'm so sorry," or whatever the sentiment is that you put out there. And we, as human beings, we naturally seek connection, and that's why we're doing it. But to do it on social media, in seeking connection, you have to think that there is a certain amount of ego involved in that, no matter how minuscule, because it is seeking that connection versus externally versus making real connections personally with people face to face, one on one, etc. And that can blossom and grow into various different iterations of what that can be. But I always found it hysterical when people would accuse me of doing I'm an advocate only for fame, and I'm sitting here going,
If
what
only you knew.
fame? what what fame?
It's
and
not like
and
any of us. Yeah, go
and
ahead.
I've never made a penny off any of this. And I don't, the few families that I've advocated for, I've never charged anything. You never charge anything. This is,
It's just
and like I said recently, at some point soon, my voice in this community is going to go fully and completely silent forever because
yeah.
I saved my kid. You saved your kid. And,
Like our job is done, essentially.
right.
Like we did our job. Our job was never to, you know, get in this and save the world or save
Right.
every kid, right? And it's like we both in the advocacy space got to a point where we were like, but it wasn't even again pre social media. We realized within like 2 or a year of advocating for our own children, like, okay, well, what about these kids? No one's
Mhm.
what is anybody helping them? And so it's like the natural progression of advocating. Like
Yeah.
you just start to like understand, like, okay, they don't all have a me.
Mhm.
Their parents don't know what this is, or there's the label conversation, all of that. But like inevitably, like you start pushing harder because you know that there are kids that aren't getting that attention. Like
Mhm.
I always thought it was so unfair. I could send one email and I could get the entire district to reply within seconds, right? But then there would be a family who had been like begging, just begging for the RTI or MTSS process to start. And
Mhm.
everybody was ignoring them. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
how, no. I'm like, just because I'm a squeaky wheel doesn't mean they don't deserve the same attention.
Right.
Um, and
And for
so,
me, it was, I started advocating for my child, and it was amazing. And okay, so I started advocating for him, but I felt like I was inventing the wheel.
mm,
You know, I couldn't find
yeah, I
anything.
know that's how I felt. I was like,
Yeah. But,
there ain't nothing
and
out here.
and then suddenly my friends are coming to me and going, I think my child might be dyslexic. And then lo and behold, they're getting evaluated and they are dyslexic. And I'm like, okay, let me help you. And, me being me and rattling off 1,000 things before I can stop myself, my friends are sitting in front of me like deers in headlights, just going, oh my God, what world have I just stepped into? And so taking it to social media was my way, and building a website was my way of like dumping that content out of my brain into what I consider to be digestible chunks. If you go to the website, there's a menu that you can navigate and you can look at what you want. You can, skip what you don't want to deal with right now, what's applicable to you, what's not applicable to you, etc. And so as my friends would come to me and go, oh my gosh, Ashley, now all of a sudden, um, little Johnny or little Cindy is, they think that they're dyslexic and they're going to be evaluated. What would you tell me? I would actually direct my friends to the website and go, I would start here,
Yeah.
because I've already dumped all this out of my brain. Start here. I'm read it, think about it, chew on it, come back to me with your questions. But instead of me like blurting out 1,000 things, I'd be like, go read this digestible little piece and then come back to me and we'll talk.
Yeah. And you
You
created
know,
these amazing graphics that, you know, inevitably that's how I found you was
yeah.
as my son was being evaluated and, diagnosed with PTSD and trauma induced inside the classroom setting. I came across like those graphics. And
Mm-hmm.
then I also came across your blog. And I was like, wait a minute. Hold on, because I've always been told as a parent, like there was only like one resource out there for parents. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll go ahead and say this. Like, and the whole purpose behind my admiration and falling in love with Dyslexia Initiative before I even knew who it was run by was the fact I'm like, holy crap, somebody's actually taking up for the parents. They're talking to parents, not talking down to them and at them. And they're not just saying, well, go to private school. I'm sorry. That's all that's, like the only answers we had for a long time, the
Or say like go to
messaging,
private
like,
school.
yeah, like IDA, like was out here just, oh, I'm so sorry. That's unfortunate. That your child really needs to be in private. I'm like, that can't be the answer for every kid. You
Well,
can't
and
say that.
IDA's mission is for educators. It's not for
And
parents.
I understand that, but it was also at the time the only
Yeah.
avenue for parents. And so
Right.
it was frustrating for me to know that like that was the unilateral messaging. And I'm going, there's got to be a parent thing out here somewhere. And then there was, and I'm not going to name them, but that wasn't what I needed it to be. I still needed something that was like, okay, I need something that is literally allowing parents like me. I know I'm not a unicorn that we have things to say and we have questions and we don't necessarily want to have established meeting norms or established like conversations and like what's taboo and what's not like I didn't want that. I wanted to have like a place to go to that I could just say what I needed to say as a mom, be it frustrated, happy, celebrating the fact that my son learned to spell, celebrating the
Mm-hmm.
fact that my son learned to handwrite. Like I just wanted to,
or pissed off that you've been gaslighted
yes,
or denied, or
yes,
yet again they refuse to say dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, or
yeah,
or they want to say it's behaviors and not dyslexia, or
yeah,
they want to say, we need to give them an ED label, or the litany of what we can't get for our kids and what we go through. Yes.
yes, and that's why the dyslexia initiative essentially, like, once I found you or it, and then found out you were attached to it as well, I was like, oh wait, this is for parents. This isn't for administrators. This isn't for principals. This is not for coordinators or LEAs or whatever uh, job that, inevitably you and I both have done professional development for, within the education setting. It's like, oh wait, this is for parents to actually have these conversations and do it in a safe space, and do it in a place where we don't have to cater and or worry about like somebody looking down on us for having failings because our kids are attached to this. So that's the thing about the dyslexia initiative that I always loved, but that's also what upsets me about like what you're about to get or what you're talking about. Like the whole clicks, likes, and share community started, right? Like that whole thing after, like, as COVID hit, right? It's just like it exploded. And I was like, where have all you first off, where have you been? Second, why have you never responded to emails? Third, you've known about this and me. Like, I'm saying from me, I'm talking to you. In Georgia, I'd been in the media for years. I'd left a paper trail because I wanted parents, like, just like you, I wanted parents to have a way to navigate it and know these are your legal protections. This is your procedural and parental safeguards. Like, I had that in the media for a reason. So, like, the clicks, likes, and shares thing, I didn't want anyone to see my face. And when I did speak at that board meeting, that was the first time anybody saw me. And then, once the media figured out like that I had a full-time job in corporate, like all this stuff, they're like, I'm sorry, will you do what? And this? I was like, yeah, and trying to raise a baby at the same time. Um, it's like I always thought that like when people saw my face, it would diminish the work. I got checked on that and in my panel though. I got checked on it.
I've
But
tried to check you on it for
yeah,
years, but
shush, shush, shush. Anyway, so um anyway, um uh,
love
so
you.
I I'm gonna flick you off so bad, but I'm not going to. Anyway, I like I said, at my core, I came to Dyslexia Initiative as an outlet to get away from the clicks, likes, and shares because I started to pick up on a trajectory, a different, I guess, vibe, a
Mhm.
different like landscape. I was like, who are you? Why are you now branding yourself? I'm sorry. When did you start? Because then things like your IEP, like I'm not gonna name them, but in Georgia, a whole bunch of them popped up out of nowhere, and I'm like, all right, now I know you, and I know you have never ever put your services out there for anybody unless like you really needed money. But right now, what you're doing screams to me, you see a chance to make money. You're gonna make money off the backs of moms, like broken mom and dads, because they've just found out in COVID their kids can't read. So you're monetizing off of parents who are absolutely crushed and they have no legal recourse right now due to shelter in place or what have you. And you're monetizing off of that. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Do you not have a soul? And like, I literally got chastised because I was calling people out. I was like, no, where have you been? You're not the one filing complaints. You're over here hiding behind the scenes, only for me to find my like something that I've done. You're using with a client now. I'm like, like you remember that. Like I got dragged by attorneys. I got dragged
Yeah.
by everybody because I kept checking them going,
Well, and there was one particular advocate who was especially, hot for like trashing you as much as they could when
which
they
one? There's,
didn't.
there's so many. There's so many.
Yeah.
Can't
But
narrow it down.
they popped up out of the blue with, I mean, it was such a nightmare. And they came at me at one point and I went,
Oh,
we're,
that. Okay, okay. I know
yeah,
what you mean.
we're not going to have this conversation. So sorry.
You're like, and we're done. You're like,
Yeah.
we're done. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. But
Yeah.
well, I don't really sit and bash the social media thing too, but I do want to say that like I
And
do
I don't
find
either because what I want to stress is that there's a lot of good out there, but
there is. There's still a
I
lot of good
think
people.
there's
And
right. I think what you and I are trying to stress is buyer beware.
yes. And I didn't think I would ever have to do that, nor did you. Like we never thought we'd have to get to the point where we're like, okay, well, we want to just like be behind the scenes and be with our kids because our children or both of our sons, voice that they would have rather had their moms than, spent time learning, being taught to read. We got that gut, like the throat punch, that we weren't expecting. Right before we went to the Reading League conference, we were like, oh dear God. We thought this entire time like we were doing this and like we were saving them, but all they wanted was us. And
Yeah.
it's like you and I both basically got to the place where we're like, I don't, like there's so many people out here now, like y'all can have it.
Yeah.
Take it. Do
Take it.
whatever you want to. We just
Yeah.
want to, our kids have told us they want their mom.
Yeah.
So we want
And
to
I
do
want to be a mom.
exactly. It's like, I
I
just want
don't,
to be the mom.
yeah, I don't want to do what I was doing. That's for sure. And I don't want to be working the amount of hours that I was working
Oh God, I know. Like,
creating content and talking to people and it's not that I don't want to talk to people because I do want to talk to people because I do want to help, but at the same time where I've gotten over the last 3 years is because really diving into the mental health component,
yeah.
not just my son's but especially
All right.
mine, and understanding how damaging fighting for him was to me, because you go into the trenches and it's a trench of denial. you know, None of us cross no man's land, to expand on that metaphor, without getting shot a billion times. And I think that it damages all of us. And, to really understand, once we pulled him out of school and we walked away from that, and he finally started verbalizing, which you were a witness to, finally started verbalizing what he had experienced and how he felt about it and all of that raw emotion, and just starts dumping all of that on top of my head. And then I had to really face facts of a lot of his truths were true for me as well. And then I was like, okay, we both need, and there's no shame in this, we both need a therapist, and we both need to start, having some really hard conversations, not just for ourselves so that we can heal, but as our family unit together, so
Yeah.
that we can, all three of us, because my child's an only child, and with my husband, all three of us can really, talk about these wounds so that we can start to heal from them together and understand, and where do we go from here.
I,
And that's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
no, you went through a lot in that time. So it's like, that's another thing. It's like, that's why I'm so protective of you. It's like if people didn't understand that, like, I was essentially trying to jump in front of a train on your behalf because you're over here
I was
finally,
breaking.
yeah, you were like finally allowing yourself to like go into a space that you and I both talked about. Historically speaking, our generation was never afforded the ability to process emotions appropriately. we put our head down and we push through. And, by proxy of doing that, like, as adults, we get diagnosed with all kind of fun things. But like you were so adamant, like, oh no, I'm fine, I'm fine. I'm like, okay, girl, look, if I've got this, you got this at least. And like, so that's why, like, when you were in the midst of finally just like accepting it, hearing somebody saying it, trying to figure out, okay, what do I do with this? Where do I go? Like, people were just like, just dumping on you. I'm like, okay, hold on. Like, it took me this long to get her to even admit and own and want to get help. And now, as friends or peers, we're going to play a game of let's dump and say some stuff that should have never been said. We're dragging somebody during their most vulnerable time right now. And you have no idea like what's going on because you haven't even asked what's going on. You've not made a phone call, you've not sent an email, you have no idea. But instead, assumptions are made, and that's how, that's why, I can't say that too many people like return that favor for me or you, because you're the first one to jump in front of things for me as well. But like you kind of have a more even kilter on that because you don't like confrontation. But with me, I'm like, no, I'm gonna get and it's been said they're like, okay, pull your bulldog back or pull her back as if you have control over my mouth or whatever. Um, I did try and navigate that as well as I could for you. But
Yeah.
a lot of this is we had like we both after the conference, after we got back from Reading conference, we both kind of made a decision of like what do we need to do now? Like what and like we both spent a lot of time with our kids after that conference. Like we spent a good amount of time not engaging with anybody outside of like our circle. And it was because we were just like trying to like undo what we unknowingly had done to our sons. Like we didn't
Yeah.
know. They never said anything to us. And
Yeah.
so for us to find out when they're like 13 and 14 years old, like, oh God, like, it's like breaking our heart. We're like, oh my God, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. Like I was trying to save you.
Well, and I want to give that a little bit of color because that's kind of a broad statement and we are alive. And so
Wait,
I don't,
do you have a timer on your side, by
no,
the way? Okay,
I
because
do not.
it says time remaining. And I don't know why it says time remaining. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Well, because it may be Zoom and I don't know how long, I don't even have a clock in front of me. um,
I'm listening.
but like, what my son revealed was how much more he had suffered within the educational environment that he never told me about because in his words he knew that I was already in those IEP meetings fighting for his educational rights, and he didn't feel like, or he felt like the mistreatment that he was getting at the hands of some of his teachers was something that I was going to be able to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And if he told me about it, then I would just be in more meetings and I would, spend more time fighting. And he was trying to protect me by suffering through those things and keeping it to himself and just never telling me. Versus maybe if I hadn't been in those IEP meetings, he would have told me. I don't know. Can't go back and relive those and see what, it's not a sliding door I can step through and see what would have happened instead. But just to give that the color of, and your son did it to you too,
Yeah.
protecting you from certain truths, from certain realities, that they have now both shared with us as teenagers that, those truths and those realities were just absolutely heartbreaking.
Well, and think about the fact that we had to bring them home from the brick and mortar setting just to get the truths out of them,
Yeah.
right? Like I already knew the damage. I just
Yeah.
didn't know the depth of it. I
Yeah.
didn't know about the intrusive thoughts. I didn't know about the overly planned ways. I'm not gonna go through that again. That was
Yeah.
traumatizing enough the first time. and that
And the
they're,
anger.
yeah, oh, the anger. Oh God,
Oh,
that was on full display. And like I felt like, so it's like your baby went one way, my baby went the other way. And we both were like, what? Because like our both of our sons, all they wanted to do was protect us.
mhm.
And we're like, no, we're here to like literally get in front of a bus for you. That's like what we as moms
Yeah.
do.
It's my
You
job.
don't need to protect us.
Right.
But, my son's over here, like, I wanted to make sure you and my baby sister were okay. I'm like, you were 8.
Yeah.
You were 8 years old. Like, how? No. And then,
Yeah.
and it's like, I when we talk about those things, it's still raw, I guess you could say. But like the whole conversation that people have with you about like you're different and like why do you only talk about this side now, and like why are you talking about the mental health and the statistics? I'm like, okay, well, prime example would be us finding out things from our kids after we had pulled them from the brick and mortar setting and put them in homeschool. Their brains were finally able to feel safe enough to voice these things, and then they allowed us to tape it. I 100% think this thing is about to shut down on us for some reason, because you don't have the paid license, or do you? You have the paid license,
I
don't you?
paid. Yeah.
Check. Okay, well, just make sure. It looks like it's about to shut down on us. I'm looking. Y'all, if it does, like, I'll get it. We'll get it.
If it
Promise.
does.
Oh, so it's got view. Okay, window, whatever. Minimize. All right, it's got 4 minutes. But I was just gonna say, while we're fumbling around trying to see why it's got a timer or a countdown going, um, it was just like really, it was depressing for us to find these things out. And for people to sit there and then tone police us about mental health and talking about the statistics and things like that. We're like, okay, so obviously you've never done this, or your kid is really good at masking, or you're really good at hiding or putting your head in the sand and not wanting to have that conversation. Because what we found out with our kids is like we had to give them the room. Like they just needed the space to decompress. And then when they found themselves in a place where they felt safe, that's where we got all that information.
Yeah.
Uh, and, you know, I think a lot of it is I want like I know I'll speak for me. When we came back, and if I did anything, I my only messaging when we came back was I thought I'd prevented the history from repeating itself. I thought I had. I did everything right. I had the IEP. I had the diagnosis in pre-K. I had everything. He learned to read by third grade. He had Orton Gillingham embedded in his IEP. He had everything. So what do we do now? Because if the unicorn of my son is over here saying what he's saying, then I it's not something that we have a ironclad answer for. Nobody can answer it. Actually,
Yeah.
I've tasked numerous people with it, and they're like, "Well, the depression." I'm like, "It's not depression. It's an intrusive thought, and it's what takes place within this and this within 5 minutes or 5 seconds. It's the amount of work you as a parent have put in on their mental health that prevents them from or whatever, so it's like
But the
that's not
point
what
of
I
the mental health is that it doesn't matter what we do. And the reality that you and I had to face head on was that it didn't matter that we did everything right. It didn't matter that, you
yes.
know, your son was a unicorn where he got it all in public school. My son didn't get anything in public school, even though, he had quote unquote dyslexia classes. All of his achievements in reading and writing have been done privately, not through public education.
Hmm.
So it's still a lived reality that you and I are not present for as mothers because, again, it's compulsory education
Hmm.
where they're having lived experiences day in and day out that we're not witness to, we can't prevent. Um, a lot of how our children, not just our dyslexic children, but a lot of how our children are viewed within the public educational system. They can't have their big emotions, and they don't get enough recess, and they're not learning through play. And standardized testing begins in third grade, and like all of these things that are the antithesis of child psychology.
Yes. Sorry.
Right? And then you add in that they are dyslexic and that they are struggling in the classroom, and the lack of understanding around that. Coming face to face with the reality that my district really and truly believed to its core, and still does, I imagine.
Hold on, we're gonna
I
see.
imagine that
Second.
nothing has changed. Huh?
Okay, nothing happened. Never mind. I was just checking. Nothing happened. The town.
Okay.
Continue.
Sorry. That because a child is dyslexic, that there is absolutely no way that they will ever learn to read above a second grade level, that it's just not humanly possible. That they believe this to their core. Once that reality sunk in, that's what I was facing, that I was just like, wow.
The societal norms
Right.
that put out there were like, hold on.
Right.
But then you have to talk about the fact that, like, I mean, like, we never really came back and had a conversation with parents or people after the conference. But,
Yeah.
and again, a lot of that had to do with, our own trauma of like, oh God, like, I need to take care of my kid, and everybody else can just like wait right now. Like,
Right.
you got
But I
plenty of,
think you and I both came back and went, I don't know that I want to do this anymore.
yeah, no, we both did. We both definitely said, nah, like, I know now that, like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Like, I want to do what I promised I would do after I got out. And that was never to have a kid again. And that was
Yeah.
to be present and to be a wife and to be a mom and like bond with my, and that was the thing, bond with my daughter, because this is what people don't even understand. Like, everybody, for those, everybody that calls me hostile or whatever names they want to say, and I don't care, but like, what people don't understand, I get the chance to bond with my newborn, because within a month of having my daughter, my son broke,
Yeah.
and he broke so badly that we had to put him on a sedative just to get through school,
Yeah.
just every day. And so I spent, from January all the way out to the end of the year just burning everything down. And then like the next year hits, and it's like
Yeah.
it's like I'm not done, because I didn't stop over the summer, and I just kept fighting. And then like that final year I was like, all right, we're done. That's when I spoke at the board meeting. That's when I got the superintendent attached to all of it fired. I took like 20 employees out with me, because like they took away the most like precious thing. I didn't get to bond with my newborn.
Yeah.
And like, as a mom, when I came back from the conference, like, I had not bonded with my daughter still. And it was because I was over here juggling like work and advocating for all of these, like, for everybody. And like,
But I think when we came back from the conference too, both of us.
I'm just saying, on me, like, people need to understand is like the reason that I am is so reactive,
Yeah.
right? Is that they don't know that part is that I literally had to just give away my right to bond with my
Yeah.
child, because I had to go fight an entire system that broke my son, and
Right.
did so in a time when they knew I was on bed rest. They put me on bed rest after one IEP meeting. I
Right.
couldn't fight with my child or fight for him. And so he kept it bottled up, because, as you heard, he said, I was more worried about you and Avery. And I just felt like I could keep it, and then you take care of it. And then it's like I said, like, when people are so quick to judge, or so quick to say that I need to watch my tone, or I need to do this, and like, oh, well, advocacy shouldn't look like that. Well, to them, this is me, finally saying,
Mhm.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a big portion of my life that y'all don't know about, and it's the fact that I didn't get to do anything that moms are supposed to be able to do because I had to go burn everything down for my son because they took advantage of the fact that I couldn't fight for him because I was
Well,
pregnant.
right. Well, and I want to go there, which
Yeah.
is, people don't want to talk about the mental health aspect. No, because the mental health aspect is not rainbows and unicorn and sunshine. And, you know, if you talk about the mental health aspect, then you're talking about the ugly side. But our families, not just your family, not just my family, but the families who are trying to raise these amazing children who just happen to be dyslexic in a system that has no desire to support them or educate them, which is what the vast majority of the people in this community are living with and facing every day. If you don't talk about the mental health, then you're not actually serving the community. That's my belief. But for those people who don't want the mental health out there, who only want the rainbows and sunshine and unicorns, I'm sorry, but they're approaching it from a very ableist mindset, which is how our culture across the country tends to work of just rub some dirt on it, put a smile on your face, pick yourself back up, pull yourself up by your bootstraps,
Oh,
and just
yeah, that one.
figure it the hell out and keep going. And everything's going to be fine.
But it's not, yeah, no.
And, and in our current culture, I'm afraid that, people are going to start to try to push, mental health has come so far in the last few years as far as conversations and people owning it and talking about it. But we're still not talking about it enough. And I'm afraid in our current culture, it's really going to be pushed down because, we're, unfortunately, I think that we have leaders who really don't want to talk about mental health and they don't understand it and they don't want to support it. And, but that's my perspective.
That's the reality, though, of the legislation part, though, is that
Right.
we legislate the crap out of it and get all this law put in place and the guardrails in place. But like at the end of the day, the thing that's missing is that they're not supporting the most crucial part of it.
Mm-hmm.
They yet to realize that even though they've learned to read, even though you know, as a teacher or whatever, did your job, y- a dyslexic is a dyslexic.
Right.
There, and as I always say, it's never just dyslexia. You're never going to meet a kid or a person that is just dyslexic. There's always going to be underlying baggage, and the underlying baggage is what I jump at because
Yeah.
that's what I know is going to be the trajectory of that child or that person's life for the rest of their life. I mean, like, you know, I'll even so like we saw that and hope she doesn't get upset, but like we saw that in real time. Like Adrian, you know, she came to the conference and she while she was filming the panel or filming our panel, like she just broke and
Yeah.
handed the phone over and like ran out of the room bawling because like it just re-triggered everything in her and it just like she was reliving her trust. She was already going through the process of this with her two of her with her babies, and then like that just like you know drove it home even further for her. Like she's like,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ, like nobody's listening to me for my entire life, and now I'm reliving it and I'm there telling the stories of like what it felt like for me to be
Mm-hmm.
in the classroom.
Right.
And like, you know, that's the thing is like we watched it in real time.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, I think a lot of it, a lot of another reason that I was like, I'm done. I just want to, you know, do these small chunks. Watching Adrian break was like watching my sister break. It was like watching all of my adult friends break. And it was like, you know, I was upset anyway because it's like the messaging too was that they didn't want the Jakes of the world to they didn't want Jake at these conferences. He wasn't the brand. He didn't appeal to the board. And I'm like, okay, he's literally the like adult version of our kid.
Yeah.
And he went through hell and he came out and he made a whole just thing where he
Platform
kids.
to help to go back into the fire
Exactly.
and
He
pull
went
the
back into the
kids
building
just like
and
him out.
yes. And so it's like that right there at my core too pissed me off. I'm like, this is the most ableist BS I've ever seen. That's why I confronted people during, Harvey's panel when, Julie Washington had to save the day because I was a little in my feelings because of like knowing that they had just blacklisted Jake. And I was like, I just sat and had dinner with him and he's my son. That's my kid. Like, and the fact that I'm being told that he doesn't fit the brand or it's not what the board's looking. Who like you just sat in my panel and cried.
Yeah. Well, then I would say that the board themselves are not dyslexic, nor do they have dyslexic children, and or they're holding on to rainbows and unicorns and sunshine. And again, it's that very controlled ableist message. One of the things that was said to me when things sort of went sideways with DI was this one particular comment was, DI was always about hope, and it's not about hope anymore. And that really bothered me. And I went back through 4 years of post. I literally scrolled through 4 years of
I'm sure about
post.
I'm just gonna be quiet now and answer questions like that.
And I was like, no, it's always been about hope. And if you don't like the mental health component and you feel like that doesn't talk to hope, then you're missing the point about what dyslexia advocacy really needs to be about. Yes, we need to be fighting for the right curriculums and the right teacher training and the right educations and writing as well as reading, because that's a huge bandwagon that you and I are
That's
both
a
on, that
whole
not
different.
enough, that not enough people are talking about. But if we're not, if we talk about reading in a silo, then we're not talking about writing and we're not talking about math fluency, because we're not talking about the language that
All
has to
that,
go
yeah,
with
that's
math
fluency, yeah.
to support math fluency. You're talking about things in a silo. If you want to talk about screening, talk about screening, but you can't talk about screening if you don't talk about everything else. You can't silo these conversations.
But they
It
are.
has to be an all or nothing, and it has to include mental health. I'll never forget that one teacher at that conference who, I think it was day 2, but we were still having tech issues trying to get everything up and running, right? Because it's not us if you and I don't have some tech issues.
It's really weird because I'm like a systems admin and I can like find everything and fix servers and stuff and program, but
I
like
know, but we were in the basement and didn't have much of a Wi-Fi signal. But, she came up to me and she said, if you could do it your way, if you could change everything in a school district, how would you approach it from a reading perspective? And I looked at, and she was so
I remember
sweet
that.
and she was really genuine in her question. And I said, that's a more complicated question than you've given space for. And she said, okay, I'm intrigued. What do you mean by that? And I went, because it's not just about reading. And she said, okay, then give me the whole thing. I went, it is a wholesale reapproach on how do we view our children, the psychology of not just how we view them, but how we treat them. All of the subjects, reading, writing, language fluency within math.
Yeah.
It is a wholesale burn down of
Yeah.
her approach, and it is reapproaching it from a true child-centric perspective, backed by what we know works after decades of research, and investing in that all day long and nothing else. And is that going to be a perfect fix? I seriously doubt it, because we can only see so far. But we need to be open to learning and continuing to shift and adapt from, how in how we go from that point in order to ultimately get to the solution that truly helps all children. And until we're willing to have that conversation, the
Yeah.
impact that we have is going to be minimal at best. It's still important change, but it's going to be minimal at best.
Yeah, I had the same. So I had like somebody ask me, or so I was at in March. She said the same thing. It was a sped coordinator for like this public schools in Nebraska, and she said, I don't go back to school till Monday. But what? Give me three things that I can take and do immediately when I get back on Monday. And Kareem and I both were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's what we need is that." Because as the sped coordinator, I know they have the heaviest lift, right?
Right.
And they're the ones that get to say yes or no. They're the ones that make that decision, but their hands are also tied by the upper echelon or whatever that however you pronounce the word. Their hands are still tied by the people that run the district. So even though you have good humans like this woman that we met wanting to walk back into the public arena and just like burn it down and redo it right then and there, she can't because for her to keep her job, she still has to fall in line and she has to find like very crafty ways to get around it or do and we even talked about the whole lawyer thing.
She
She's
has
like,
to influence up as well as
yeah,
sideways
yes,
and
you can't
down.
just, yeah. And so her and I talked about the comment because it's always a funny conversation. Someone said like about lawyers, and I was like, yeah, no, don't do that. I'm like, exhaust everything before you get to that because like they are going to drag things out a lot longer. You're going to spend 9 months on something that could be hashed out within 6 hours in one meeting. And I say that from experience. Like I only needed a lawyer at the very end, and that was only because I was going to due process and whatever. But she gave me a voice on that, or she not really gave me a voice. She gave me an answer. She's like 100%. There are a lot of times where people immediately bring attorneys into the situation, and I've yet to be able to even get into that meeting to assess what is needed to fix it. But if they've already brought the attorney in, I can't do anything because I have to run everything through my attorney, and then their attorney has to talk to our attorney. And by the time that happens, it's just like a moot point. But the ask is simple and the deliverable is simple, but
Right.
I can't do it. So that's also something I just want to bring up real quick for everybody out there who wants to lawyer up so quick in these meetings and they think that we're these at like, okay, so there's a difference. There's advocates that go into the meetings with the attorneys. They start out and then there's the people like, and I'm not like, there are a lot of Ashleys and I out there, believe it or not. And there are a lot of moms that have been there, done it. And we can all tell you that none of us at any point wanted to bring an attorney in, nor did we
And
ever
I
want to.
never did.
Yeah, it's like we didn't want to pull our kids. We didn't want to put them in private. We grew up in public schools. We're a product of public schools. We never ever wanted to do any of the things that we had to do to save our kids, but inevitably we got to that point. In my case, it was a favor. It was somebody paying it forward because I had helped her get her child out. And I never thought anybody would come back for me. And so, my messaging on that is if you have the lawyers in the meeting from the jump, it's going to take a lot longer to get something done. So I never bring an attorney in. A lot of people don't even bring attorneys in ever, like Ashley said. Um,
Well, and one thing I want to point out too is every state is different.
well, yeah, yes, yeah,
And states like Maryland and Texas, parents lose 97% of the time once the lawyer is brought in because the way that the system exists within the state.
yeah,
In Texas specifically, all of the hearing officers over due process work for the Texas Education Agency. So you know, they're already employees of the state that is, you know, pushing out, you know, rules, et cetera, to the districts, but the districts can pretty much do as they please. But, you know, all you have to do is sit in on a due process meeting, because, you know, sometimes people air them openly, to see. And
To see
I
how
do
Sam
negotiate, right,
gets.
but I do negotiation for a living. So everything is about body language and the way, you know, the dynamic between the individuals. And it takes less than a minute to see the dynamic between the district attorney and the hearing officer versus the parent's attorney and the hearing officer, which are wildly different. You see a camaraderie between the district attorney and the hearing officer versus you see hostility between the parent attorney and the hearing officer. You know, and if parents are losing 97% of the time, then that says an enormous thing about how slanted the system is in favor of the districts versus the parents. So if you want change, you have to find other ways to achieve that change. When, I mean, my son started off in private school,
And then you went back.
kindergarten. Do what?
No, I was about to say, like, in the irony, you went to public.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So we started off in private school, kindergarten and first grade. He hits the dyslexia wall. We pull him out because we've been told, and you know, Texas used to do everything under Section 504. That Section 504 was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and he would be protected. To, you know, so we pull him out of private, we stick him in public. But the funny thing was, I remember we just moved into this house, and I was standing at the top of the stairs. My husband was standing at the bottom of the stairs. Had not yet enrolled him in public school, and we had already done Linda Mood Bell, which, you know, to do Linda Mood Bell is a place of an enormous privilege because of how expensive it is.
Yes.
But we were looking for a private tutor, and we made the decision because we both believed to our core that he would never get what he needed in public school. So we weren't going to rely on them to save him. We were going to do it on our own, which, looking back on it, I think is so funny to look back at that conversation, because it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because it's, you know, they didn't do anything to save him. In fact, you know, if they had their, you know, and it's not to dismiss everybody, because there were some well-intentioned, well-meaning people along the way. Absolutely there were.
Oh yeah.
But the district itself had zero intention of my son ever achieving anything of merit in regards to reading, and especially not when it came to writing.
And the writing part we'll get to
Ugh.
too, because, well, no, I mean, like, you know, I'm gonna get back to well, because Karen, or I always mispronounce your name, so don't get mad at me. Karen is in the comments at talking and asking questions, and she's loving the conversation. And Adrian said she's really sad she can't watch it live for kids. Her daughter is not in a good headspace, so she'll wrap
I
back up.
understand.
That she loves us and she'll watch it when she can. You know, Harn she did ask, like, so what do we do? Like, you know, or how can we go about, like, you know, actually fixing this? And to that, like, this is just me. And, you know, this is coming from somebody who is, all right, done the public school thing, sued to get out, sued to get into a private school that was supposed to be the holy grail of remediation schools. But my son didn't need to be remediated because my son's was already reading. He'd already mastered decoding. He was gifted everything. So I put him in the school, and they knew he was dysgraphic, and they already told me, they were like, no, well, we don't have to do anything with his reading. I'm like, so can you even do anything with his dysgraphia? They're like, well, we can try. So I get him in there, only for things to go sideways in that. And I was like, okay, not only is he regressing, but his dysgraphia is somehow worse. And he is sitting in class absolutely miserable because you're not teaching grade level content. You are on purposely, you know, and I got that out of them later in an IEP transition meeting, which was just funny. But let's just say, like, I got him out of the private school, I brought him home, and he spent those 2 years homeschooling and unschooling at the same time. And then he made the decision to go back to school because he went to camp, and the person running the camp happened to be the lovely amazing human Makala that worked with both of our babies to help unlock their brains so they could write and do it without a computer. But so this is coming from two people that have been there, done that. And to the point where like I said, when you yank your kid out, that's like you're done. If you've gotten to the point that you're like, I'm done. We're going home. Like, whatever you're doing is not working, or we're losing our kid in the process, and we are drowning. So we're just going to go ahead and leave. And just roll with it and see what happens. Because that's what I did. I didn't know what I was doing. Makala saved me. She was like, "Here, let me do it because
I didn't know what I was doing.
like you've done everything for free for everyone. Just give him to me." So, you know, to get it right, we can't really there's not an out of the box answer to get it right, because what we know to be true with like our kids is that all they wanted was they wanted their moms present, and they wanted their fun moms at that, meaning they didn't want their moms to be stressed out, they didn't want their moms crying, they didn't want their moms yelling at administrators or eating dinner in their bedroom every night, because they were trying like hell not to let the kids hear the fighting, right? So they just wanted their moms. And then
Yeah.
it's like, you get your mom, but then we find out all the other baggage up underneath it. And fundamentally, like, what we know to be true, at least I know, is that the damage that was done in those early years, while they can move on and they can 100% be successful later in the academic setting, there comes a point where you have to put them, and I mean truly, you have to put them as a child. You have to look at them as a child, not as a number, not as an FTE count, not as an SLD or whatever label. You have to look at them as if they are your kid and go, what would I want to happen? What would I need for my son or my child in this moment? What would they need?
Mhm.
And until somebody gets to that point, meaning administrators and all the people that make the decisions, until somebody finally acknowledges our kids are never going to fit in that box. So stop trying to make them fit into the box and let them talk to you, because that is what we found out. Both of our children fundamentally wanted to have control over their education for the first time in their lives. We gave them complete control and they thrived. And they were able to overcome things that and we had been told that they would never be able to do. And it was because we listened. And it was because Makala listened to their ask. And that is something that everyone always yells at us about and says, well, you have to be honest about this. I mean, you'll never be able to do this in public school because of how many kids we have. I get that. But the reality is public school isn't going to exist in 10 years, right? It's just going to be gone.
Yeah.
And it's hemorrhaging already. The numbers never came back from COVID. They never came back, and they never will. You and I both know that. Like, we both said that immediately in 2020. Like, the first ask I got was, what do you think is going to happen? I'm like, a lot of people are going to find out their kids can't read, that they should not have waited, and their trust in public school is never going to come back. And that's
Right.
what happened. But all of that's to say is, like, the way it needs to be done is that we have a really bad habit in society of not wanting to listen to our children. There is still this outdated societal norm of their kids, they need to be quiet and only speak when spoken to, and that type of thing,
Seen,
right?
not heard. Yeah.
Yes, seen, not heard. And that's at the crux of it. That's the problem, is what you and I both found out is once we allowed our children to take control over their education and we removed ourselves from it, like they blossomed. But not only blossomed, they felt safe. They finally got to a point where they felt like they could talk to us and not worry about it. I mean, like they ultimately knew we would get upset, but they knew that it was like, okay, I'm in the house with my mom and this is a safe space so I can do this, right? So what we found out is that our kids, all they want is they just want adults to listen to them. I even asked my son, I'm like, in everything we've ever done, and I did this with he even said this for Jen at Reed Charitable Foundation when he did that thing. It was like, if I could tell kids anything or tell people anything, it's like, it's not a superpower. It sucks. If you don't have my mom fighting for you, you're screwed. Your money doesn't matter. No one's coming to save you. And good luck. But and he was 12. But the resounding theme with that was that my son just literally, it was like, if you don't listen, if you guys continue on this trajectory where you don't let us as the kids talk and give you our feedback, and you want us to sit in the seat, be still, be compliant, do everything you want us to do, but yet we're not allowed to ask you questions, we're not allowed to give you feedback. That's not how it works. And the like, we our kids know at a very young age that's not how the world works, because they watch it at home with their mom and dad, or they watch it at home and they're like, okay, well, opinions are allowed at home, back and forth is allowed at home, but in school, this is the only place where we're made to sit here, keep our mouth shut, take it as gospel, and not say anything, because God forbid we push back or ask questions. And I know I'm
So,
long-winded, but I'll just say my son is my mini me. My son, everyone said we want him to advocate for himself, but when he started doing that, people got in their feelings. I was like, I told you, once he starts advocating for it, y'all gonna have a mini me. You're gonna have a problem. And so now he's 15. He's around his peers in the classroom, right? And I love it because McCall over here challenging these kids with, like you said, civil discourse. They are debating. They are doing the critical thinking. They are doing all of that, but they're doing it in a way where the kids have a say in it. It is and to everybody that's about to say, well, they're going to disrespect the teacher. No, the kids do not disrespect their teachers. The kids engage with their teachers and they listen and they give feedback. And
right.
they're not chastised. They are looked at as humans, not kids, as humans. And that, I know, but I'm just saying, it's like kids need to have a say in their education. And that's my suggestion on one way to look at it. Go ahead, Ash. It's long-winded, but it's a hard answer. It's a hard answer.
It is a hard answer. And I'm going to complicate it further because I'm going to say, people, with the way that education was designed and the way that it has evolved, the different philosophies that have taken hold across the decades, you can map it across the 20th century, the different philosophies that happened. Then you had Nixon go into office and begin the dismantling of public education, which was furthered under the Reagan administration and has been furthered really with each presidency since to a detrimental degree. You had whole language, which never should have come about, and then you had balanced literacy, which did even further damage. You've got, I'm going to use the word, influencers and personalities that are driving certain philosophies. But if you just think about the construct of what education is and the current form that it is, there is no silver bullet. There is no, if you do A, B, and C, then you
Yeah,
can achieve D. That doesn't exist. It is so far down
the list.
the pipeline of the construct that it is. The only way to fix education is for brave and informed individuals to have the conversation about what should education really and truly look like, but that be almost this radical revisualization that is not politically driven,
Sorry.
which I don't know how you get
Hey,
politics out of
that,
education,
you got
but
money in.
it can't be politically driven.
Yeah.
But is about, I mean, there's so much science, there's so much data, not just from a reading, writing, mathematical perspective, but about child psychology
Oh my God, yes.
and all of these things. And I mean, the only way to truly fix it is to put all of that science and all of that data first and foremost, the reigning, dominating factors, but also exist in a space where you know the data will continue to evolve and you evolve with the data simultaneously. And I know that the educational establishment, if it had a voice and could speak for itself, would say, but that's what we've done. And I would push back and say, no, you haven't, because you left child psychology behind. One of the biggest things that my son said, and this was true for yours as well,
Mm.
was people would, I mean, okay, his IQ is 132. Your son's is right there too. Our boys are in no way, shape, or form stupid. But existing in a system that was condescending to them because they were dyslexic and believed that they couldn't learn, but then sitting with curriculums in other classes that are not intellectually challenging,
Yeah.
and combine that with the condescension, my son would tap out so fast and just be like, I'm phoning this crap in because I don't care. Because if you can't engage me at my intellectual level, I don't have any desire to be here. But if you engage me at my intellectual level, I'm going to be in the first desk, dead center, up front in this classroom, talking to you, raising my hand, asking questions, wanting to understand more, 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 more. But if you are going to condescend and not actually care about what I need, intellectually speaking, I'm out.
Uh, I mean, like, I don't have anything other than yes. Because, like, that's the thing is, like, oh God, I can't even tell you how many times my son used to come home and be like, I'm bored. And I used to think, like, he's just being an ass or something, like, because he's always been a very competitive kid, like, education wise.
Right.
Um, he dragged his teachers, and I'm like, let's not do that yet. Maybe wait till high school. Um, but I mean, yeah, but I was the same way. But like, yeah, no, he's been a very, very vocal. Like, if you're not going to ask me or engage me in a way that stimulates me to want to actually partake in this conversation, I'm just gonna sit here and draw or ignore you.
Yeah.
Be like, what? I'm sorry, were you talking to me? Because yeah,
But then the challenge is you have kids, public education is, truly, it's a space that's supposed to be meant for everybody. And so you have children
yeah,
that are, intellectually disabled all the way to highly gifted to, you've got genius level children, you've got Einsteins walking around. in some of these schools across the country. And you have to be able to adapt, which the current model cannot, but you have to be able to adapt to meet each child where they are and provide them what they need and appropriately challenge them. And so, no, I don't think that there's a simple answer to that question, because there is no silver bullet, there is no easy solution. It is going to take radical thought and putting a whole lot of very powerful people who control this system essentially out of the conversation
Oh yeah,
in
there's a whole
order,
bunch. Sorry.
right, in order to completely revamp what exists.
Uh,
So I'm saying that I don't think that there's an easy solution short of, to use the phrase I use all the time, burn it down and start over.
well, yeah, we both do that though. Like we both
Yep.
like out here saying like I just like burn the whole thing down, come back. But like okay, so then we have to think about like when now remember we have to be the responsible ones because we watch advocates curated. I'm going to go ahead and well, I'm rip the band-aid off and let everybody know. So this is the thing. Like Ashley and I have been out here doing this thing, and we never ever wanted the clicks, likes, and shares. We never wanted anything. We didn't want people to see our faces, all that kind of stuff. We were just processing our emotions. We were also in the process of trying to make sure kids didn't have to relive what our kids were living. I didn't want anybody else to end up like my friends who are all dead.
Yeah.
So it was a very personal thing. And then, this landscape this whole thing is turned into just a nightmare of curated content. And it's like the irony of people coming up and saying they're monetizing off of our pain and our trauma, only for them to turn around and do the exact thing. And I'm like, okay, so did you catch amnesia along with that one too? So I'm gonna address the elephant in the room. The reason that I'm 7, I'm gonna enjoy my peace. I'm gonna enjoy my family. I'm gonna take care of me, and I'm gonna take care of mine. And I'm not putting anybody else in front of me and mine anymore, because of the fact that it has been made abundantly clear to me, and I know it has to Ashley too. There's a whole bunch of people that have got so far into the content they forgot about why. And then by doing so, they have taken things that we have done and made it their own. But by doing that, I didn't give you permission to use my story. I didn't give you permission to talk about things that I don't want you talking about. So, the whole conversation about dyslexia and behaviors, pipeline to prison, all that. And I'm just using me as an example. That's been my mission since the day one. And that was because I wanted to keep my kid from those statistics.
Mhm.
And it was a very
And I can vouch that that's been what
been,
you've talked about from the
I know,
the
I just
beginning.
been laser focused on that because I lived it, I breathed it, I was involved in all of it. And what my friends were the ones that saved me and got me out. Like they were the ones that told me, Lauren, stop, you've got to leave. Like if you don't leave, then you're just going to succumb to everything else. So, it's like the irony of my friends pushing me out of the suburbs and forcing me to go to the city and to take on my career, and for them to come back around and tell me that they did that, they had to do that, because if I had stayed, I would have died. Just I would have been another casualty of what takes place in the suburbs all the time. Um, so I take it personal when I see people begin to speak on like the pipeline to prison and or the dyslexia behavior thing, because by doing so, maybe I wasn't clear enough when I was doing all of these outreach things. Maybe I wasn't clear enough on this, but yeah, I was a part of that. Not just my son, not just my sister, not just my friends, but me. I experienced it. I watched it. I know how my friends landed in jail. I know how that cycle repeated itself. I know how it still continues. So this year, when I saw those mental health bills come out and I read the bills, I immediately knew what it was. It was just shoveling our kids through to prison even quicker. And that's what it is. And so when I have people out here who had watched me do whatever work it is that I do, whatever this thing is, they've watched it, I've helped them navigate it, I've done whatever I could in my power to do to make sure they have a voice or whatever. And then for it to be taken,
Yeah.
and then for it to look, on the surface from everybody else looking at it going, oh dear God, this is so not your realm. Like, it's really, really awkward, but it's also something that breaks my heart knowing that this has been my mission from the beginning, and all that work that I put in, all the stuff I did. There's that meme out there, or it's not even. It's like, why beg for a seat at the table when you can make a seat? That's what I did.
You did.
So all these moms out here who are out here getting in their bag with their little podcast and their stuff, you're welcome. You're welcome, because I fought for that seat. She fought for the whole social media thing. You're all welcome. But with that being said, you can all have it, because I personally don't want to be associated with it, because it makes it feel dirty to me. It now makes me feel like it is nothing more than a hashtag. You have taken it just like you did with the science of reading, and you took that and you made it into a hashtag. And now you're doing it with behaviors and dyslexia. Now you're doing it with the pipeline to prison. And how effing dare you? You never visited your friends in prison. You've never visited your family in prison. You did not become a mom by proxy of losing somebody and their kid being orphaned, and you being given the instructions on what to do when they die. That is not yours to speak on. And that's why I have now, after this, like, I'll shut my Facebook, my public one, down again. I'm walking because I have integrity. I'm walking because my integrity is not for sale, and my stories are not for sale, and my friends and their children aren't for sale. And you're not going to monetize off of it. And if you do monetize off of it, then there's a special place in hell for you, because you didn't fight the way we fought. You didn't have to go through the same things we've had to go through. I've had to, I last week I had $6 in my bank account. And then I'm looking around and I'm like, oh, well, at least all the rich white ladies are doing well out there. And it's a slap in my face. It's a slap in the face of Ash. It's a slap in the face of a lot of people. A lot of us have been out here doing this for years, and we never wanted anything other than to fix it. And you're not the person to have the conversation about behaviors and dyslexia. You're not the person to have the pipeline to prison conversation. That does not belong to you. And furthermore, on that last part, if all means all, why the hell have I not seen y'all at the Black Literacy Matters conference 2 years in a row? Not a single one of y'all has showed up. And to me, that shows me exactly what all means all. It means all means all when it's convenient, and when it's something that people will click, share, and like. But what about the work you do on the ground? What about the work you do in the trenches? Are you actually fighting for all means all? Or are you just using it as a hashtag, like you've used the science of reading as a hashtag? That's like the resounding, like, send off of me going, like, that's why I don't want anything with this community or to do with the community. I don't owe anybody anything else from my life or from me, because everything I've done has been stolen. And my intellectual property is floating around out there. I don't care. I just try. I use data to help people, but I never thought that people that I considered friends or that I trusted would take my work. And so a lot of this conversation comes from that. Is that like the last 10 months of my life have been absolute hell. And everybody knows. And to just to see that seat that we fought so hard for get taken and everything else, like I don't want anything to do with it. And that's me. That's like how my send off as to why we're doing this is also a kind of like you said at the beginning, we're both gonna end up walking. Nobody will see our faces or know. And we can be God. I want to be like Mary so bad. I want to be like Mary. I want to be Mary. I want to be like my kid was a valedictorian. He graduated. He is in college. I am doing my thing. F all of y'all. Right? Like I wanted that. Mary is the goal.
Yes,
Like,
Mary is the goal.
the goal. That's what it's
And we're
like.
so close.
We're just like, just right there. But it's
Right?
like people like, and she even told me, and that I'd get pulled back in.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're gonna make mistakes, you'll get pulled back in, but then
Well,
you'll
and not a whole lot of people know this, that Mary from the get-go was my guiding star.
well, yeah.
Because I had a conversation with her right when I started being on social media. And, we're not going to say Mary's last name because that's not our place, but we both know who we're talking about when we talk about Mary. We're talking about the same
She's
person.
the same person we go to
Correct.
for advice on how to get out. What do we
Correct.
do?
Because Mary is dyslexic herself and she raised a dyslexic child and she made decisions as a parent and as an advocate because she was being re-traumatized by having to advocate for her dyslexic child. Just like, you were talking earlier about Adrian. I talked to Mary as I was getting started for a very long time one night, and she said a very key thing to me, and that was I had to stay true to the dyslexic voice in everything that I did, or she would never support me. And in everything that I've posted, everything that I've written, everything that I've tried to do, I hear her saying that every single time that I create anything.
Yeah.
Because I never wanted to let her down. And I was one of the last people she spoke to when she truly hung up
I remember that.
her advocacy. She reached, because there was a very specific incident that happened. And I reached out to the person that created this content that was profoundly triggering to the adult dyslexic community and had a long conversation with this educator. And it wasn't a divisive conversation. It wasn't a mean conversation. It was a conversation. And we just spoke. And I was like, okay, this thing that you did, I understand from your perspective, this is what you're thinking. But I need to explain to you how it's been received. And she had a hard time seeing it from that perspective. But once she got through to that side and could see the content that she had created from the perspective of an adult dyslexic, which I am not personally dyslexic, I was simply representing the voice of Mary and a whole bunch of other people
A whole bunch of other adult dyslexics.
Right, who started crying out. She was like, this particular educator was like, oh my God, I never saw it that way. And that's not what I meant. And I said, I know that's not what you meant. And, if you could just change it.
Just reword it.
Right. And she took it completely down. And,
which is what a good human will do when they're confronted.
Right. And she was like, I didn't mean to be disrespectful. I said, I know, because you're such a champion for our kids. I completely get where you were coming from in your perspective, but this is how it was received from this perspective. And that's, that was an amazing conversation. And, I went back to Mary and I said, okay, here's what happened. And she said, thank you.
But with all
And
due
I'm
respect,
done. Yeah, and she went, but this drove home for me that I'm really done. I'm done. This is the last conversation that I'm going to have for the dyslexia community. I'm not going to post anymore. I'm done. And she has
And
not deviated
she
from
didn't
that.
do it. She bye.
Yeah, I mean that was like out.
Yeah, I know, like in May of last year when I was like tinkering around with leaving, instead of reaching out to you, I immediately went to her.
Yeah,
And she's like, "You don't got anything to prove to anybody." She's like,
yeah,
"I have watched you just, and you don't breathe, you don't exhale, you just keep going. And the way people treat you be damned, you just keep going. And if all you need to hear is you've done a good job and you've helped, I'm telling you that. If that's what you need to hear to walk, you've done it and then some.
right.
You don't owe anybody anything else." And I was like, I'm not even fishing for compliments. I'm literally just trying to navigate like how you got out.
Yeah,
And I inevitably got pulled back in. And like she said I would. And I don't regret the couple of things I did, but you know, I guess the landscape these days has just put a different lens on it, because what I want to do is I want to amplify voices of the adult dyslexics. I want to give a voice to those that don't have a voice and never got a voice.
yeah,
And I also want to focus on making a space, and I don't want to say it out loud because God knows everything that you and I say, like somebody inevitably will do it. There's a specific subset of individuals I would like to give a space to, because I feel like if we really want to fix this, if everybody really wants to fix this, then not then the individuals that I'm talking about, they've got to be given more than just a platform.
yeah,
They've got to be given more than just like a sound bite or an article in the newspaper. They need to have the attention on them,
right,
and they need to be the ones that get to drive the decision making regarding how we fix this inside public schools and
right.
how we fix this in general, because we as normal, I'm going to call us normal, we're not normal, we have like all the labels and stuff, but we're not the dyslexic ones. Okay, like that's like the one thing we can check off the list. I think I have like surface dyslexia at best.
I think I have dyscalculia.
Yeah, well, me too. I had like math trauma and all kind,
Yeah,
but I wasn't
same.
even a programmer anyway.
Yeah, and I have an MBA. I mean,
Yeah, it's
God
like
forbid.
we work in with numbers all day, but like in programming and number negotiations and stuff, and like we see numbers and
Yeah,
patterns. We're like, oh,
data is my friend.
exactly. Like I can't even open my iPad without, oh, what's this? I'm like, damn, I just want to draw. Okay, anyway, sorry, getting back to it. But the people that can truly fix this, the people that can do justice to this, and that can actually, I don't know, have the full circle moment to have those conversations, as you said, with the people that can make the change or have the ability to do that. It ain't us.
No,
It ain't white moms. It ain't rich white moms. It's not on us. It should have never been on us. But here's the thing: the twist is, I spoke because I knew damn well my sister was never going to talk. I only started getting loud because I, from a young age, knew my sister would never ever tell her story, and I knew from a young age that I, and I'm not dismissing my parents. You and I both know we've had this conversation with our own families, but like at a young age, I knew my sister was the one that needed the attention, not me, and I had no problem giving that over. But I also know that when I started getting really vocal and really pushing, it was because I had her in the back of my head. I had God, I was reliving all of the just torture and nightmare stuff that she went through and that my mom had to go through to save her. And
right.
it's like I was sitting there going, I'm never gonna get. She's never gonna tell it. She gave me permission to talk and tell her story. She's never gonna do it. But how are we as neurotypical white women who have been afforded the gold standard education? Why are we out here talking about this? We need to give it to the people that actually lived it
Lived it.
and still live it, and they're
Yeah.
still trying to fix it. And you know what? They're trying to fix it for their kids, and it traumatizes the out of them. And I just don't think that, I mean, like my efforts are going to just be limited to people that historically don't get a chance to talk.
Yeah.
Um, and we don't see them often because, just as Mary said, there's no I mean, that's like reliving. That's reliving something they already know.
Right, but it's to what you said earlier of, specifically about Jake. He doesn't fit the brand,
No, he doesn't fit the brand. Yeah,
and they don't fit the brand. And,
nor
you
should they.
know,
Sorry.
the issue is, what I would encourage people to do is find the truly authentic voices that are out there. Um, I hope that my voice has been authentic across the years, but my voice was authentic from my reality of being not a dyslexic individual fighting in the trenches for my dyslexic son. Your voice was authentic from that perspective. People have tried to control all along, from the get-go within the social media aspect of this community. People have tried to control whose voices are heard and whose voices are not heard.
Yeah.
And I have said for years, if you attempt to censor what voices are speaking on behalf of our dyslexic community, then you're missing the entire point. You're trying to curate a particular perception instead of truly presenting the truth and the reality. It doesn't need to be pretty. It doesn't need to be, the very few iterations that it exists in within the social media community. This platform has to be open to everybody and every voice, every skin color, every gender, and everybody's raw, real, uncensored truth.
Yeah.
And until this community is fully willing to embrace that, this community isn't going to achieve that much in what we're trying to do. It will be small wins. And, I'm not dissing the small wins,
Yeah. I mean, we're
but
not.
we're asking for wholesale change. And we need to lift up voices that we're currently not lifting up. I've asked my son from the get go, to let me amplify his voice. And he doesn't want that. And he never wants that. He doesn't want to be the poster boy for this iteration of the dyslexia community. Maybe when the conversations become more truthful, more authentic, more real around the lived experience, maybe he'll find his voice at that time. But, whatever his choices are, I support and applaud them because he's amazing. He's fully remediated. He's reading and writing above grade level. He's going back to brick and mortar to college prep in the fall. And,
That's like that's the thing that you and I get to do now is like as the Mary standard, right?
yeah,
Is like the goal was to make sure our kids were afforded the right to learn to read, and not just that, but the right to learn and the right to engage in academia the way they wanted to and were able to. And I'd be damned if you're going to sit there and tell me that my child cannot engage in conversations that he's been engaging in since he was a little kid. And what you and I both know to be true. What we did worked. It
yeah,
was unconventional. It
It was
was.
profoundly
It,
unconventional.
it was not. It was not normal, and it was
No,
like everybody was like, "What the hell y'all doing? What? Just mind your
but
business. We got to take care of something, okay?"
but
And
what I want
both,
to say too is what we did was of extreme privilege.
well, yeah, it was very privileged. Very. I worked from home at the time, so yeah, I could yank
Yeah,
my.
yeah.
And that was the God. That was the
But
only godsend from
right.
God.
It's just that I never want to take a light off of that. It
Yeah,
shouldn't have to be as privileged as it was. It
exactly.
shouldn't have to be that.
Like
But
we
you and
should.
I achieved what we did through extreme privilege.
Yeah, like it's like we vetted. Well, I didn't really vet McCalla because McCalla had already taken my son. I've known her husband since we were in uh like middle school. But
Yeah, tell McCalla I need her to clone herself and send one
right?
here.
We all need that. She is doing the conference circuit now. So she is
Good.
doing that. So there's that. Anyway, maybe, but it's like we didn't do anything conventional. We did everything the way we acted on mom gut. We bucked the norm. We spent copious amounts of time, like again, with me, 80 hours of my life in IEP meetings I'll never get back. You know, lawyers, lawsuits, dumb things, rinse, repeat. But with that being said, my son is going into 10th grade next year, taking AP. Like, like, yeah, it's like my son is taking classes that everybody said wouldn't happen. But the problem with that was when I was told that, I immediately took that as a challenge because I don't like the word no.
Yeah.
And I don't like the thought, and because I knew it not to be true by watching my sister. So the moment that those things were said to me, I was like, so you just dared me to prove you wrong. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I override local control to get this into compliance where you got to do it whether you want to or not. So that autonomy you like so much, not so much anymore. You
Yeah.
don't get it anymore. And then by doing that, I'm hoping that that helps the kids behind them. But you know what? Like I said, I have the privilege of knowing or honor knowing that my son is going to be okay. He is a normal 15-year-old boy, right? And that's all we ever strived for. All we wanted was our kids to learn to read, be given an education, and have something that looked normal. And that's it. It's
And
not a big,
define and well, and for me it was what I said from the get-go is I want him to define his own life.
well, yeah, we wanted them to be in control of their lives and not
Yeah.
have to depend on props or prompts or graphic or all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And
And we
just,
need to say that too. Our kids don't use graphic
yeah,
organizers.
we
They don't use
accomplished the
assistive
impossible.
technology. Yeah.
Yeah.
My son does prefer audiobooks, but that's his only assistive technology. But he doesn't need it.
Yeah, so dysgraphia can be remediated,
Yeah.
shockingly enough. And once it is, it's the most beautiful thing to watch because your kid goes from being extremely frustrated because they can give you the oral dissertation of like a novel, but they can't put it on paper. But then
Yeah.
once that thing just unlocks, the world unlocks for them.
Yep.
And then their handwriting, like my son has mastered like his signature. He loves writing his name now. He loves handwriting. His annotation. He's like it's like he's in college. Like I remember that being the first thing I was told by my college was like this kid is like he's annotating like he's in college with a handwriting. And, we did that
Yeah.
because that was, again, a challenge for both. That was somebody daring us saying that our kids were going to be stuck on computers for the rest of their lives. We're like, watch. And, McCullough did some crazy stuff and got it out of them, and their brains literally clicked. And now they're out here extremely confident. At least I'll speak for mine. Mine's confident. Mine is in his bag as it pertains to I got this.
Yeah.
Right.
And and mine has some anxiety about going back into brick and
Yeah,
mortar, even though he's dying to go back in brick and mortar because of some very poor treatment at the hands of some teachers, which still, if that one particular one, if you're watching, if you ever materialize in front of me, it's going to be a bad day. But
Stop. Okay. You know that is warranted.
I just said it's going to be a bad day
I know. I know. But
for
once he
her.
gets in once he for her anyway, I could say so much on that, but I'm not. But like
I
once
know.
he gets back in there, I think because I talked to my son about it. I'm like, what would be your like for somebody that's like going back in, what would you say to them? And he's like, well, as long as they're going back to the right place and a place that they feel comfortable at, take it all in, enjoy it,
Yeah.
because the hard part's over. The easy part now is waking up, going to school, knowing that you can do it and you don't need any help. Because my son, at best, like he would need a 504 for, and I mean, the college admission guy just like messaged me about getting Sawyer in to do the ACT. And like, he's like, do I need to do do I need to do the time extension? And so I'm like, I don't know. But that's the
Yes.
beauty of it. We're now navigating a part of our kids' lives that we never thought we would make it to. And
Mhm.
I'm good with that. I'm
Yep.
cool with knowing that my son is on the trajectory to go to college and he doesn't have to rely on prompts, graphic organizers, assistive technology, nothing. He is just he's that kid I always knew he was going to be. And that's why, at least for me, I'm going to say I can walk away and gladly hand this over to the voices and to the people that need it, because my job is done as a mom right now. My daughter is still a whole hot mess. I
But
got a
she's
whole
not
other
dyslexic.
I got a whole other one that I gotta raise, okay? And she's out here bucking at 6 years old, my mini me. But for right now, my job is done with my kid.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and I don't want Sherry to get mad because she said something early on social media like 3 days ago, and I'm like, oh, hold up. When I say I'm done, I mean I'm done. I'm not hovering. I don't have to have my phone in my hand 24/7 to, is he okay? I'm not having panic attacks about my kid at school anymore. So when I say I'm done, I mean I can finally be the PTA mom, or I can finally be the mom that like goes on the field trips, which is what I'm doing with my daughter. I'm getting to relive the life I didn't get to have with my son, with my
Right.
daughter. And that's what I want to do. I don't want to be out here on social media messing with folks. Nah.
Yeah.
I want to live life and I want to enjoy it. And I also want to make sure that the people that can change this are given the ability to do so. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're at, or where I'm at. There you go. But I'll let you
Well,
finish.
no, but I'm at the same place too. I mean, I ripped off the band-aid with the school that he's going to go to, and I was really honest with him, just like I told you. And it's going to be an adjustment for both of us when he goes back. One, he's really excited, but at the same time, he's really, really scared. And me, I'm sitting here waiting for the shoe to drop.
Yes.
And when I realize that there isn't a shoe that's going to drop, I think is when I'm finally going to be able to
Exhale.
let go.
Well,
Right.
that's what I did.
Exhale.
Yeah, that's what I did with Sawyer. Once I realized that he made that decision, and then that first day he came home, and I was like, even after he went to that other private school, I didn't see this version of my kid, but when he came home from school, he was just as happy as he could be.
Yeah.
And I was like, so really? It was that easy? He's like, yeah,
Yeah.
there are kids there that are awesome. And I love that,
Yeah.
he just, it's something that I promise you, Ashley, as somebody that's experienced it, I've become the absentee parent this year with my son, and I apologize now, Michaela, if you watch this, and you know that because I keep apologizing. I'm the mom that's over here like bobbing and weaving, trying not to engage with any of the stuff with my son, and that's mainly because I had to hover for a really long time. And
Right.
it's so lovely to know that I don't have to have my phone like this worrying, because he's in a safe place and the people there care about him. And for the first time in my life, I don't have to worry. And that to me is the biggest reward out of this fight, is that
Yeah.
at the end of the day, he's a normal kid and he's happy. That's all we wanted. And
So it's taken us 2 hours and 15 minutes to say our kids are remediated. We're pretty much tapping out. You're more out the door than I am, but I'm like right behind you.
I'm just wanting to burn everything down. Like, I'm not done fighting. I mean, mine's just gonna be behind the scenes because I got some stuff to shore up. But once that's shored up,
No, I'm done fighting. And I don't know if you saw the post that I did on Substack, but you
I,
know,
I commented, man.
would I no, I did another one.
Oh.
I just encourage this community to be, again, find the authentic voices. But if somebody is trying to say who has a voice and who doesn't, run in the other direction.
Someone's
Because,
keep it.
right, because we can't be censoring the voices in this community. We can't be controlling who speaks and who doesn't speak. And if you go to a group, if you join a group who claims to be a grassroots group, who is selective about who is and who isn't a member and who does and who doesn't speak, that's not a group, it's a club. And if it's all women, it's a sorority.
Okay, so you just took like what Kareem said in my yeah, Kareem. So yeah, that's the whole yeah.
Yeah,
Everybody,
but we're not going to expand on that a whole
like,
lot.
I'll say that though, if everybody in there it wants the same thing and there's no dissenting voice in there, it's a club. It's not a coalition. It's not productive. It's everybody stroking each other's ego and giving each other a woohoo, we did it. Like, okay, great, but you forgot about, like, I don't know, B to Z, because
Right.
you get mad if you get mad at that one dissenting voice and you chastise them and cast them out because they're dissenting and they don't agree,
Right.
then that's not going to change anything.
In
That's
the corporate world, we call it groupthink.
Yes.
And if all you want is groupthink, then you know, more power to you. You're not going to achieve much. But anyway, we've been doing this for over 2 hours.
I know.
I'm starving.
I am too. I'm gonna go eat, but you know what? I love the fact that Karen and like Adrian are all up in the comments, and like I just want to say it's like you know, between them and then my girl Kristen here in Georgia, like at my core, I've stayed the course and I've tried to stay out here as long as I can for them, and I will always, always, always amplify their stories and try and help them get to the point where they're comfortable doing what we've done so with so much ease.
Yeah.
Because for us, this isn't traumatizing, but it's also not scripted. And that's something that I want to leave with. If you find yourself doing this, just don't. There's no script. There's no. Just go with your gut. Don't listen to everybody out there who's trying to implement a stat like meeting norms for you. I mean, Jesus, do you want to be an IEP?
And don't try to make anybody happy with how you look or what you say or what you post or any of that. And I'm going to also say that, you know, there's going to be some people that are going to be mad about some of the things that we've said in this. And we came into this not caring.
There's a reason some people like us that y'all don't like that like us. Anyway, go ahead. Continue. I'm so
I was trying not to do that.
I'm just, you know,
You're being honest.
What did he say?
What I've always loved about you.
There needs to be more cussing and dyslexia. I think that's like what one of them said to us. There needs to be more cussing and dyslexia. There you go. So sorry. Continue. I apologize.
Yes.
I had to get that out.
And thank you, Josh, for having said that before. We won't say which Josh, but thank you, Josh, for having said that before.
Mm-hmm.
But
So sorry.
Truth isn't convenient. Truth isn't pretty. Truth isn't rainbows and unicorns and sunshine. And, you know, we're going to keep talking about the mental health and whatever the Dyslexia Initiative evolves
Orphan.
into
Yeah.
without me at its helm, because at some point I'm walking away from DI. I'm going back to not being on social media and living my quiet little life.
Yeah, but DI is still, hold on. She can do that, but see, like I can manage the behind the scenes. DI to me is such a resource for parents just because of the lack of truth
Yeah.
and honesty and like that's out there. Like I can't let you like sunset it. So like if you can bounce and I'll just like, make
Yeah,
sure
no, I
the
mean,
voices that need to be heard can be heard.
my idea is
Okay.
somebody will take it over. I just don't know who that somebody is yet. And it's going to be a tough somebody to find.
Yeah.
I've been burned by so many people in this community who, had no right to the DI platform, but I was overly trusting and overly gullible and, just wanted to think that everybody was out here for the same mission instead of
Hey, I did
really
the
being
same
able to
thing.
see through to those people who truly just wanted the attention.
The clicks, likes, and shares, and then the
Yep.
15 minutes never went away, and it's still going, and it's all over. Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah.
But, at some point, yes, and the website's going to be the hardest thing, of course. But at some point, I want to go back to a quiet life.
Is there such a thing with two boys in your house, with two men in your house? I'm gonna roll it back and say two boys because your husband sometimes is like still like the same age as Graham. So sorry Andrew, love you. But I mean, look at the all the stuff behind you. That's your husband's. That ain't Graham's. My husband's the same way. I mean, like hell, like he's got a whole geek shop downstairs. Yeah, like so that's like I don't want to like in this like people thinking that I'm really mad. I am mad, but I'm valid in my reasons for being mad. But at the end of the day, thank you to everybody in this community that has allowed either myself or Ash to have a bandwidth or have the capacity to amplify conversations that were historically ignored or not allowed because I fought that's what I fought for the most in the advocacy space was the mental health conversation, the statistics, how we got to where we are, how we can hope to do better, and how we stop the pipeline in prison. And I'm never going to be upset with my work in that. And I'm never going to discard that. And I'm never going to just hand it over to somebody either. I'm going to always be protective over it. But
Yeah.
I'm not mad and jaded as like everyone thinks. I'm just done keeping my mouth shut and I'm done allowing people to just do their thing and then think it's completely appropriate. And
Well, I'm definitely not angry. I'm definitely jaded,
yeah,
but I'm definitely,
good word. That's it. Yes, I'm jaded. There you
yeah,
go. I'm jaded. I'm not
I'm
mad.
definitely realistic. Um, I'm not very trusting of people that approach me in this community and go, "Can we be friends?" And, there have been, one or two women in that group who, are genuinely good human beings who have beautiful hearts and great souls. And I just was finally at a place where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And it was no disrespect to them, and I wish them well. I love them, but at the same time, I'm sitting here going, I just can't.
As grown women in the past, I think like in the past 3 years, you and I collectively, as at our age, we have been hurt and we have seen this ugly side of humans more than either of us are comfortable voicing.
Mm-mm.
We've seen things that we can't unsee. We've read things we can't unsee. Like we've heard things like, I mean, the things that have been hurled our way in the name of, oh, but it's for the kids. Like there's a lot. And,
Yeah.
Ash and I are, I'm usually the one that's going to put everything out there and just call you on it. But because I do respect some of the voices out there and I do respect this fight, I'm not going to put everybody's dirty laundry out there.
Right.
But the things that Ash and I have had to endure, the things that we have kept from the public, even our husbands, because we just were embarrassed that we allowed anybody to break us or hurt us. Like,
Yeah.
understand, like that happened a lot in the last 3 years. We saw sides, we saw things, and we've been through things that we can't turn our head and act like didn't happen. And when she says jaded, yeah, I'm jaded. I'm 46 and I'm being reminded as to why when I was 8 years old, I built a wall around myself and kept it there. And now I know that that community that I wanted so much, I didn't need that community. I didn't
Mm-mm.
need all of those people. And I only really needed like a handful of people. And I should have never dropped my walls, but I did. And I own that. I only needed Ashley and a couple other people. I never needed any of the other stuff. So if that's what you're striving for, it's just kind of a precautionary warning to you. The
Right.
other side isn't as green as you hope it is. So I know we're all lonely in this because as moms of children with disabilities, we don't have a lot of people in our lives, but be careful about that because
Sometimes they're
some,
profiteering.
yeah, sometimes the underlying theme is it's there. You just don't want to see it. And then when you do see it, you get really mad at yourself for not seeing it
Right.
and you get upset. So I'm fine with just my small little group.
Yeah.
And I
As
know,
am I.
and I don't, again, I'm not going to say I don't discourage people from finding people to be their tribe, but just be cautious.
Yeah.
And if your gut and your heart says something, trust it.
Right.
Like,
And trust your instincts.
trust your
Because
instinct.
I trusted people that my instincts told me not to trust.
Yeah.
And
So
I swallowed that instinct and extended trust for the sake of
the kids.
the work that I was doing and trying to help kids. Right. And I regret that. Well, I don't regret that. I learned from that.
Yeah, but as grown women, we should not be learning these things at our age. We should not be learning the things that happened in like middle school at our age.
I
You
know.
know, but
But
that's the landscape. It's still there.
right. But it also showed me that what I'm grateful for is it showed me that there was an exit, but an exit on my terms, not
Exactly.
somebody else's.
Yes. Yes. I'm gonna say yes, 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 because you're right. Because I don't have to leave on somebody else's terms. I can leave my way. And
Right.
my way is going to probably look a lot like I'll just go back to writing like I used to do. And that's how I met Ashley. And that's how we met was we were writing the same story and we just happened to meet each other anonymously. And
Yeah.
it's just been that the entire time. And we at our like she and I are both were writers. And this social media thing,
Yeah.
not so much anymore. I
And
miss
after 3 years, I'm finally writing again.
and the same with me. I'm finally like I got through the trauma of the last 10 months. And I'm finally able to process things without having rage, anger, cussing everybody out, flares while crying. Um, that's not my normal personality, by the way, everybody. I legit had like PT. Anyway, so I'm back in my bag with writing, but I'm happier that I'm doing art again. Like I lost the ability to do art for a really long time and I'm doing art again, so that makes me happy. And those are just simple things. But we love everybody that has stayed the course and hasn't somehow managed to take the bait from everybody else and that has supported us. And this is just kind of like our way of saying, well, we're around, we're just not as accessible as we used to be. And
Definitely not.
please don't take it personal. We are always watching. But there's a lot of times where we just like hit close the account or
Mute.
off our phone or off of everything and
Mhm.
just because it's healthy or for
Yeah.
us.
Turn off notifications, step
Yeah,
out of
turn your mail off.
conversations.
Yeah. Turn off that messenger sound. Get all the damn messaging apps off your phone. Like just wash your hands of it. I'm being a hypocrite. My husband won't yell at me for it, but be present.
Yes,
Be present.
100%. And on that,
We're gonna
let's end.
and eat because I'm hungry.
Yes.
Bye, everybody. Bye. Okay.
And since you're the host, you have to take us off Facebook.
I know. I'm doing it right now. I'm trying.